Hey everybody, we are back. Now, as you can see, motorcycles don't stay together for very long around here. We were just doing some mapping with the 2020 Z H2 when the production version of the Power Commanders arrived to our facility. So let's do what's in the box, because this will be fun. So what's in the box? You've got a Power Commander, and you've got various connectors and things. Guess what's not in the box? Instructions. That's why we're here. We're helping our friends at Dynojet create some instructions. Believe it or not, they managed to make this entire thing without ever seeing a bike. It was all through schematics and the work we did here working together. So you could have a Power Commander. We want to thank them for that. So what I'm going to do, we have a prototype on here. And as I was going through just some basic instructions to try to get a format, I realized that some things are just a little easier to demonstrate in a video than they are in a hard copy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you this installation. And if you look, it's not real difficult. You've got one connector here, you've got a ground lug here, you've got a crank position sensor here, and then the gear shift gear shift position sensor wire here. All very easy. The problem is to get to them on the motorcycle. The Z H2 really has a whole bunch of stuff crammed in really small places. So instead of standing on my head and trying to explain something to you that you may not understand, I just pulled a bunch of stuff off, and I'll show you right now. Alright guys, so as usual, the first thing we always recommend whenever you're going to do work on your bike is to use the genuine Kawasaki service manual. You can get those aftermarket ones, but they really don't do a very good job. I would show that to you right now, but I gave my copy to Mr. Don Gould. He's using it right now to hopefully crack through the CCU. So I will just let you figure out how to get your gas tank and seats off to where you can get to this point fairly quickly. Now, the first thing you want to address with the Power Commander, number one, is where are you going to put it? We run it along this side of the bike, and on the Z H2, you've just got all the room in the world here to just lay it up in there for now. We'll get it a little more securely later. Now, one thing I do want to mention, because we don't have a flash for this bike yet, when we pulled off the stock exhaust, we also took off the exhaust servo motor, which made the bike throw codes. So what we've done is we've pulled the entire servo out and installed a servo buddy, and we will give a link to a part number in our store for that. So that'll just sort of lay right here. And then the first connection you get to on the Power Commander is actually the chassis ground. And on this particular bike, if you can see that bolt right there, and I'll just go ahead and put it there. Because one of the things I want to mention, we're going to go ahead and route this harness up. We're going to go high with it. And let me say that. Ordinarily, your ram air hose and all of this are in the way. I pulled this out just so you could see a little bit better what's going on. There's only a couple screws here, a couple screws here, just sort of move this out of the way. And then you've got 3 screws here that connect the inlet to the inlet of the supercharger. You do have an O-ring there, and these get Loctited when you go to put it back together. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I wanted to pull this out of the way, and also go ahead and mention, while you're doing this, if you want to install our pair valve cap, that's where it goes. It goes right on this nipple, and then you push the hose over top of it. Now, once again, we don't have a flash, so we can't remove the pair valve entirely, but we can plug it so the bike doesn't pop and crack and make all kinds of noise. Unless you like that noise. If you like it, just leave it. Doesn't hurt anything. Can get a little hard on your muffler after a while with all that exploding. But anyway, so let's show you what we're going to do. First thing here is just pull this. I'm using a 10mm socket to pull this screw out. not be messing with Dan's frame. All right. So all we're going to do is pull this screw out. And if you look at this connector, it's got a pretty big head on it. Whenever that happens, I try to shove those underneath whichever one, oh, well, I say head. It has a large hole in it. I try to put that underneath one that has a smaller hole whenever possible. Just gives it more surface area to be retained so you don't have to worry as much about it trying to break off. And then we're gonna get this wire here back out of the way in a minute. One of those ones you just can't get much travel on. There we go. All right, if I had my manual, I'd tell you how much torque that to, but since I don't have it, I'll just tell you, use 1/4 inch drive tools and don't over tighten it. Now you have the ground wire here, which brings us to the next point of contact. And this is, like I said, this is a little confusing because ordinarily the ram air hose is in the way. But this 10-pin gray connector is the one that these wires need to connect into. And I can tell you this, they just did not make this simple. There's no way that I would be able to push this and pull that out with the ram air hose there. So really what I ended up doing, and it's a little silly, but now you got to remember this. There's antifreeze in here. This is a return line for the cooling system. So basically, all I did break these loose and then put them back hand tight, because if you loosen them completely, you're going to seep antifreeze. But that allows you to pull this bracket off. You can just sort of pull that up out of the way. All right. Now I got that out of the way. Now I'm just going to go put this back. Now I can tighten that. Now I can come over and finish this one off. And like I said, with it on the bike, it's a little difficult, but you can still pull this down, which allows you to get to this button. So basically what we're doing here, we're going to take this, and like, if you want, you can route it underneath. I just liked it because it's just cleaner to go up over top. That way. Make sure I've got a nice solid click there. Same thing here, except you really just want to connect them together the way they go, Brock. All right, I didn't like that click, so we're gonna pull that back. All right, so now this stuff can just sort of hang out up here until we put the ram air hose back on. I'll show you what that looks like here. Of course, I have to put my bracket back. In fact, well, you know what I'm going to do? There's a hose that has to connect here, and to keep this from dropping down, I'm going to put a tie wrap up here and just sort of hold this up in place. All right, so if you look right here, there's a this when the ram air hose or tube goes back up on there, this needs to slide over top of this nipple. So I just tie wrapped this connection up a little higher just to sort of keep it out of the way. And then I'm going to finish putting my bracket back on. Once again, we're just doing these one at a time so that we don't cause a leak. All right, you can see where I didn't have it tight. It leaks a little bit out, but we're good. We've got plenty to take care of that. All right, and then the other part, this section of the power commander here will now get routed. I routed mine right underneath the plenum here over to the other side, and I'll show you what that looks like here in just a minute. Okay, now moving over to the right-hand side of the bike, this pigtail comes over and goes up towards the front, and this is our original prototype version. And you can see we get here to the throttle bodies. This is a throttle position sensor, or Posi-Tap. So really what you need to do, you can come in there, push that down, and then pull up, and that allows you to have access to this connector. Now, you can see that we've Posi-Tapped to the purple wire, which is the third wire over as the connector sits on the bike. So what is a Posi-Tap? It's actually a very ingenious little device that is designed to tap two wires together. So I've got just a piece of scrap wire here. If I set that in the slot, now when I screw that back, you can see the little tip. It's like a needle tip. And all you have to do is screw that in until the tip gets in the wire. Now you don't want to over tighten it because it could make the wire, you could actually break the wire. Now if I wanted to just go ahead and pretend to Posi-Tap my power commander into this line, then all I do is pull this off, slip this back this way. Some guys will tin the wire. I actually think it gets a better connection without it. And then we've basically got the same thing going on here now. But what we're going to do, we're going to shove the wire down in the side here. And then we're going to screw this section in. And that wire wraps around the post and gets pulled, gets clamped very tightly. So basically that's what we did here. To the third wire over, purple wire, and that gives us our throttle position sensor for the power commander to operate. Now, we kept going with our wire, you can see over here, and basically we kept going up until we got to the crank position sensor. Now, how would we know which wire the crank position sensor is? Well, we just basically traced it off of the front of the engine here. It's this wire. It's a 2-wire black connector that goes up here. And what I'm going to do, I've got my wires are a little tangled up in here. I don't like that, so I'm going to fix it. And then I'm going to show you what else we did. All right, so it's a really simple connection. You simply unconnect this wire. What do we got here? These are yellow and black. You unconnect them from here. And you reconnect them, click, and click. And then we will just shove all this back up under there so we can't see it. But before we go to there, the last thing is to attach the gear shift position sensor. Now, on the H2s, it was in a different location. On the Z H2, they moved it up here in the wiring harness. So basically what we would do is we would come over here and we would Posi-Tap the blue and white wire into this green wire with the red tracer right here in the center. One thing I can mention to you, that's only if you're going to be using the power commander with something that is gear dependent, you know, ignition timer, quick shifter, but these things have their own quick shifters. So since we're not going to be doing that, all I did on ours, and it's a little confusing, our wire, our prototype wire was yellow with a green tracer. All I did was take it up here, wrap it back and forth, wrap some wire around it because we're not going to be using the gear position sensor, and we're just going to shove that once again, shovel that up here to where you can't see it. But if we were going to hook it up, that wire's long enough to just go straight across the engine and come right back in here into this wire. So that's the physical part of connecting a power commander. We'll get into mapping and so forth later, but for the purposes of this, one thing I can mention too, while you're in here and you're putting on your pair valve cap and some of the other things, your servo buddy, one thing I can mention is on the Z H2, the air cleaner, we have our Sprint filter prototype version here. The air cleaner just slides right in like this, and it's secured with 2 2 screws. So pretty easy stuff. Now we're going to put this thing back together, and we're going to see how much horsepower we can make using our full exhaust system on the Z H2. And we don't have any weird codes because of our servo buddy. Should be interesting to see what we can get. Before I forget, Dynojet gives you some alcohol wipes and some Velcro. You can mount your power commander. I actually leave mine. I don't worry about mounting mine. Some guys like to have them mounted in a specific spot. Just so long as they're in the tail section and they're out of the elements, that's all you really care about. I've had, and you know, we do a lot of mapping. We do a lot of track side adjusting, so we're constantly getting to the USB port on this thing or the CAN bus when we're on the dyno. So yeah, you can Velcro them down or just let them hang out. I've got bikes that they've been hanging out in the tail section for over 10 years and they work just fine. So I'll stand by that advice.